So nice to see you, Farsana, after such a long time.
Yeah, nice.
A very good
Hello.
evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. I am happy to welcome you to the second webinar of Series 7 on professional, personal, and career development titled Reimagining Legal Careers, Building Relevance, Value, and Resilience in a Changing World. This is the 39th BSR webinar for the years 2025-2026. This webinar is organized by the BSL Career Guidance and Mentorship Committee with the BSL Webinars and Legal Symposiums Committee. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the chairman of the BSL Career Guidance and Mentorship Committee, Mr. Harsha Fernando, President's Council, and the co-chairpersons, conveners, co-conveners, and the members of the committee, as well as the chairman of the Webinars and Legal Symposiums Committee and the president of BSL, Mr. Rajiv Amarasuriya, the co-chairman, conveners, co-conveners, and the members of the committee. I would also like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the Executive Committee of the BSL for all the support and guidance. To commence today's proceedings, I cordially invite Mr. Harsha Fernando, President's Counsel, to deliver the introductory remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Isuri. Welcome, everybody, to this. I would call it a seminar or a discussion on career guidance. We have got the best resource person that anybody could ask for, representing very different perspectives, which we believe will be of relevance in your career. So I will just give a brief introduction so that we can straight away dive into the subjects. So I will do a few introductory remarks, followed by Mrs. Farsana Jamil, President's Counsel, formerly a Senior Additional Solicitor General of the Attorney General's Department. She will focus on the sort of the well-known career paths available to us in our legal profession, particularly in terms of whether you want to career in practice of law in terms of transactional as well as litigation, or whether you wish to join the Attorney General's Department or the judiciary. And she brings with her a wealth of experience, not only as a very senior and a much sought after counsel, but also as a person, a lady counsel who has walked the talk and sort of broken the boundaries and has now become an inspiration to many young people who have been observing your career throughout. We also have Mr. Kitsiri Gunawardena, who unfortunately for us left the profession long time ago, or the active practice of the profession, and now he's the chief officer of the LOLC group of companies, holding company. He also brings a very wide experience, having worked firstly in the public sector, including, I believe, at the Securities Exchange Commission, and now in the private sector. So we have invited Kitsiri to share with us the perspective of careers in the private sector. Then we have Mr. Dr. Sanjeeva Veeraman, who is the CEO of WSO2. He will join in a little while because he has another commitment that he has to attend to. We have invited him to basically tell us why we'll all be out of a job in another 3 years' time because of AI. And how we need to deal with it, and also perhaps tell us whether we can gain good employment prospects or careers or earning capacities in that sector, which is developing at a fast pace. Then we will have Mr. Rukshan Athapattu, who is joining all the way from London. I'm sure most of you, because we are focusing on the young lawyers and law students, will relate to him more than you will relate to the rest of us. He's somebody who recently left Sri Lanka and forged a career path both in Dubai and now in the UK. So hopefully he will give you the hints as to show you how the whole world is now at your fingertips if you are keen to take it forward. So having said that, I prepared a very, very short presentation. We hope to go where the panelists will make a short presentation of their perspectives for about 10 minutes. And after that, we will open it up for questions. So I invite the participants to have your questions ready. And at the end of all the speeches, please pose your questions. We can't promise that we will be able to accommodate all the questions, but certainly we will try to take many questions as possible. So let me try to see whether I can share my screen. Yep. So this is just to set it. I'm just asking you whether you want to strategize your career or maybe time to find an alternative one. The choice is yours. I just want to start by telling the good things. You see, why people need lawyers. We basically bring a couple of things to the table. We have knowledge about the legal system, procedures, substance, etc. We bring in certain resources, primarily in terms of networks, access we have, and more importantly, the reputations. We bring certain skills, which we like to think we are the only ones who have it, but it is not the case. But certainly, we are supposed to have these kinds of skills. And two critical skills among them is the ability to communicate well and then to deal with issues in a very dispassionate and an objective manner. And also, we are supposed to be very strategic as lawyers to solve problems and see problems in a different way. But here is the problem. I just put it very quickly. So we have the current legal system. You guys, including us, are all part of sort of produced out of that system. Then we go to a senior, the traditional way, and the senior, at the beginning, you think he's crazy, he or she is crazy, but you don't want to say it. But before long, you will end up being just like him, and you end up feeding into the system. And as a result, the legal system, at least in Sri Lanka, is gradually going down, while the rest of the country is developing in the other direction, and relevancy is becoming a challenge for us. So because of that, to stay relevant, we are sort of abusing a monopoly that is built on archaic rule, frauds, and inefficiency in the system, illegal protectionism, obnoxious lack of accountability, and a militant reluctance to change. I'm sorry, some might not agree with me, but this is my personal view of where we are. Future, I think we have to be very, very customer focused. There is going to be commoditization of legal services. There is a lot more liberalization of legal services. We will not be able to hold our monopoly the way we now do. And of course, very disruptive technologies. So here are some of the things that I see might come. Companies, people are going to reduce their legal budgets. They're not going to pay the lawyers as much as they want. We think we can earn. They are no longer interested in whether you're in a personal difficulty or not. They want their work done. So it might be individual versus collective services. They will no longer be interested in getting a legal service from you and running to somebody else for their tax advisory and to somebody else for another thing. They will want a solution that covers everything. Unfortunately, our professional ethics and other rules sort of don't allow us to provide that service yet. So we need to change. There'll be capital coming into legal service delivery models. We need to change our way of running things from being this private practitioner sort of from a different standpoint of view into more private sector type service delivery. Bespoke legal services is what everybody is looking for because standardization is now everywhere. They're not going to pay you for something that they can get off the internet or through ChatGPT or any other AI-based LLM model that gives you that. Alternative legal service provisions are becoming very, very common. Different free methods. It's no longer you can just send a fee and expect them to pay. It might be hourly billing, fixed cost, capped cost, value billing, payment for output, input. So all these changes are having. And at a point in time, they will replace the legal brain as the way it's going. So this is I see both opportunities and issues, but something that I want you to think about it and ask the question, what is the value that we can bring as lawyers? And here are just few things. We have to be strategic. I referred to that earlier also. I won't waste time. This is a framework that I would like to share is if you want to develop in your career as in your service provision, in your value addition, try to develop three things. This is something that I personally use, both your knowledge, attitudes, and skills. A combination of these things will hopefully get you where you want to be. This is something that a presentation that I prepared a couple of years ago. If you want to go for litigation services, that is, if you want to become a court-going lawyer, this is what we will do as you enhance in your seniority. So the ones in purple are the more the senior will do, and the ones in black is what the junior will do in a chamber. All this will be taken over by AI. Right? So when I prepared this presentation 3 years ago, I did not have the purple colored one. I only had the red color one. Now I have got the purple color. I think AI will take over, but I don't want to be a doomsday prophet. I only said AI will assist, but it very can easily take over. So figure out how you are going to stay relevant in this basis. If you want to do transaction work, these are the things that you will do. Once again, the black ones are what the juniors will do, and the senior is supposed to do the rest of it. But then look at what's going to happen. So all these things, legal advice, document management, drafting, template selection, legal races, due diligence, all AI will take over. A little bit of negotiation, transaction management, risk assessment will be left to the very niche practitioners who can bring the perspective until the AI takes over. So what do you need to do to stay relevant? I leave that question to you. But I would like to leave it with a comment that was made by Google Director of Engineering several years ago. He said by 2030, we will have point of singularity where you will have the same brain, a computer or a computer will have the same brain that of a human being. And that's the day that we will have to start looking for alternative ways of earning our livelihoods. So in that context, I'm hoping that I have not created too much of a negative impression. Can we replace lawyers? Certainly we can't, because justice is the eternal quest that people, civilizations will go after. So we will be needed. As to how, that's a question that time will answer. So with that, may I please invite Farzana to take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Harsha. Hello to everybody here. Thank you for that wonderful presentation done in 12 minutes or 11 minutes. Beautifully put and made me also wake up on certain matters. The area that you have given me to speak on is in this reimaging legal careers, relevance, value, resilience. The area that I'm looking at is traditional career pathways in the bar. I can't speak about the judiciary in Sri Lanka, although I have done a bit of judicial work outside. And integrity, work ethic, and overcoming professional glass ceilings is, I think, what is sought from me at this point. So that's a lot to speak in 10 minutes. It's a big topic, but I can very quickly tell you this. Irrespective of whether there is AI or not, or whether they take over all of our work, I think integrity, work ethic, and overcoming professional glass ceiling, those 3 points will yet be relevant to the human lawyer. So my aim is just to tell you that we as lawyers, as one thing is as lawyers, but more as female lawyers, have a very odd, unique role to play. Today we consider the practice of the law as either in a courtroom, a boardroom, or elsewhere. I can talk about what it is to be a courtroom lawyer. And within the courtroom lawyer group also, you can be from the, what we in Sri Lanka would call the official bar, or you can be in the private bar. And even within that, you can be in litigation and non-litigation. And by non-litigation, I mean things like alternate dispute resolution and other types of counseling where you advise people. But like Harsha has already told you, that advising factor might get carved out to some other third entity. So, but I think the saving grace for human lawyers is that throughout all of that, integrity and work ethic cannot be in any way replaced by AI, which will give you a clinical answer. And your answer will depend on what you put in. How much you put in and how you build your narrative into that is the answer you're going to get. So there will always be that part of the human lawyer which will yet be needed. having said that, let me quickly get to integrity. So integrity, in my view, at the bar is not just being honest. I feel it's more kind of a sacred, complex, and sometimes a lonely duty. Because this, simply put, integrity is doing the right thing even when nobody else is looking. And it is a constant negotiation, I feel, between your duty to the client, your client, whoever the client is, whether it's a litigation or non-litigation, and coupled with an overarching duty to court or the system that you're servicing. So now for women who may, like us, who may face stereotypes and who always have other people questioning your competence and leadership style, demonstrating kind of an unwavering integrity, I think, helps to counter the biases that we often have to live with. So one of the ways that I think you can do and counter that bias is to build trust and credibility. And when you consistently act with honesty and transparency, I think that will dismantle the perception that as a woman, you are less capable and you are more emotionally driven. So that is one thing, to build trust and credibility. The other point I would like to, I think, look at is ethical decision-making. So ethical decision-making, I think, is a decision based on sound principles and not based on achieving a personal gain or a desire to conform to something. I think that also will lead you to be respected if it is seen that you have a you look at things critically, clearly, and with a rational mind. I think that would be one of the grounds on which you can be, as a woman, be regarded as ethically driven in your decisions. The other is to inspire loyalty. And that, I think, to inspire loyalty, you have to own your mistakes as a leader. That, I think, is important. Now, with regard to how to build up integrity, how to show how relevant you are, and your work ethic, integrity, work ethic, I think they are kind of intertwined with each other. So if you are in court, for example, I think you have to be the eyes and ears of the judge. So for example, I think Harsha knows this better than the others who are seated here, because he and I would have faced this constantly. If you're aware of a binding legal authority that goes against your client, you can't conceal it. The secret is, the best thing is to present it and then work your way around it and persuade the judge to distinguish it. Right? You have to bring it. So this is an act of intellectual honesty and candor. And that's what I think separates you as a mere counsel from a true Minister of Justice. At the end of the day, you have to be a counsel who's also a Minister of Justice. And that is the reason we as counsel are trusted in court, because the court has to be able to believe you when you speak. And the court has to be able to presume that you have done your research fairly, clearly, and honestly, and you're not misleading the court. Because at the end of the day, you are a partner in assisting the court to arrive at a fair and correct decision. The second is what I think is called the cab rank rule. Now, this applies to people in private practice, right? And I think it's a very unique rule. The cab rank rule is something that what it dictates is that a counsel must accept any brief in a field in which he has competence, provided he is paid and he has no conflict of interest in regard to that subject or that person. Now, why is this important? Because it ensures that the most vulnerable, the most unpopular, and the most hated, probably reviled members of society also have access to the highest quality legal representation. It is the ultimate defense against tyranny of public opinion. And it takes a lot of moral courage. And it is the price we pay for our independence. So sometimes people will ask you, or you will find very frequently as a counsel, people will ask you. Sometimes I have found even judges asking, are you really appearing for that person? Do you not see what has happened? Right? So this is something that we have to live with. So building your integrity and keeping your ethical balance through that is a huge challenge, right? Now, the take-home message is that integrity is not easy. It means occasionally having a difficult conversation with your client and sometimes telling them what they need to hear rather than what they would like to hear. But that is something we have to do. The other aspect of being able to, if I may tie all 3 points up together, and I will move from one into the other because of lack of time. And I think I must have taken, 8 minutes by now. I must be having about 4 minutes left, Harsha. Is that right? Yeah, about 4 minutes left.
Yeah, I mean, about 4-5, you can take your time. Thank you.
Okay, right. So here what I would like to say is that meticulous preparation and intellectual challenge of your own knowledge, I think, is one thing that assists to break the glass ceiling and move forward. And I think the key point here, something that I always followed, was never to underestimate your opponent. Always believe that he's 10 times better than you are and he knows something about your case that you don't know from a purely litigation point of view. And that was something that I stuck to because I always felt that the other person knew better than I did and knew my case better than I did. So I didn't have the confidence to go in to court unless I knew their case as well as they did. Otherwise, you couldn't do for your client what you needed to do. So once you have done that and learned the facts and presented your position to court, then I think you have to detach after a while. Because what happens is when you're dealing with your client, you will often deal with their worst experiences. People in crisis, people in grief, people in financial ruin. But to be strong and be a balanced counsel, you have to cultivate resilience. Sometimes you feel you have won a case that you thought you would really lose. Sometimes you lose a case that you really thought you were going to win. Either way, you will face judges who will disagree with your submissions, colleagues who are formidable, opponents whom you just cannot deal with, and you feel utterly defeated. I have gone through that. But at the end of the day, you have to detach from the result. Then that you will stay there and not get deterred and want to go back home and say, oh, this is not for me. So the work ethic of a good counsel, I think, is not about logging in time and hoping that you will win. You fight the good fight and then you leave it. And you have to reap the result in the courtroom. So very often, young counsel will feel, we did our best, we didn't get what we wanted. Doesn't matter because you can't control the result. Overcoming the glass ceiling, that is something that I get asked about all the time. I can tell you one thing, there is no magic formula. People will have asked me numerous times, I can't even count the number of times, how do you balance this? How do you balance this and that, your personal life, your professional life, your social life? I think we all do this balancing act in different ways. But there is always one thing that you will sacrifice. And personally speaking for myself, I think I sacrifice some level of social life. And that social life that you sacrifice as a counsel, what I did was not the social life that I had with my family, but with maybe people outside of my family. I had to pick and choose. So you pick what is really important for you, and then you decide what you need to do. For women, another matter from a litigation point of view, litigation for a woman seems to be difficult. But I have to tell you that it is possible. And there is no need to get feel so challenged by it that you feel you can't do it. I think it's possible. And I think proper preparation, delegating what you don't need to do, not to over control, but to do 100% when you can, and also presenting your best, not to be deterred by the fact of who your opponent is, whether it's male, female, or anybody. I think the secret to it is proper preparation and then presenting what you know in the best possible way. Everybody has different styles of presenting. So, but breaking the glass ceiling, we women, we have what is called the motherhood trap or the motherhood penalty. And many people feel, how can I do this? How can I do childbearing, taking care of home people, and then also doing this? Yes, it's extremely hard, but it is possible if you have the correct help around you. And you need to be able to ask for that help and then make use of the time that you have. So it is very difficult. one of the ways that you can work around it is to remember that litigation is a very dynamic thing. What you start off with, you might prepare this evening for a case tomorrow, but when the case begins, what you start off with is not where you end up. You will always constantly have something that you didn't expect coming up. And therefore, you will be left with this feeling of, oh, I do not know enough. But I think after a while, you will learn how to deal with that as well. So with regard to how you break the glass ceiling, I think showing that though you may be female, that doesn't have anything to do with your level of preparation and your level of competence, and that gender doesn't come in the way of presenting what you have to present, and that you present to the listener not based on any gender values, but based on what needs to be presented from a clinical litigation relevance point of view. And that is, I think, important. So, Harsha, is there anything else that you would like me to touch on in particular?
No, I mean, I think within the constraints of time that we imposed on you, I think you have covered many aspects. And at this stage, I would like to thank you for even drawing on your own personal experiences and showing it. I think the takeaway for me, and I'm sure it must be the case for everyone else also, is that you demonstrated how you can balance it all. You can't have it all. Certainly, you have to sacrifice certain places, and you kind of gave us a hint as to how you can prioritize it. You also referred to the importance of work ethics. And I think if I understood you correct, you gave a very broad definition of ethics. It's not only about doing the right thing, but also doing the right things right. And work ethics include that you have this complete understanding of what the client needs, and that your ability to deliver those services within the bounds of professionalism to the best extent you can. And I think that's something that our young lawyers need to keep in mind, that you need to develop your professional capacity on a continuous basis. And that certain challenges that you faced as a mother, as a wife, as a woman, all you're saying is if you have certain fundamental approaches to your profession, the circumstances will allow you to balance those and still achieve what you set out to achieve. So thank you for that. And I think for the benefit of the participants, Farzana, I have known her for the last 28 years. It's been a privilege to have known you. She has had a career in all three branches. She has been in public sector by working as an official bar, rising up to the rank of Senior Additional Solicitor General. Then she holds a senior position in a judiciary overseas in Fiji. And so she has a judicial exposure. And now she has established a very successful private practice as head of her own chambers within a very short period of leaving the public service. So you bring in all those three perspectives, and I sincerely hope what you said not only will inspire the crowd, but also show them that it's possible to balance it all and
Yes,
have it
sir.
all to the extent. So thank you, and I'm
Yeah,
sure there
the
are some
take home,
questions. Go ahead, please.
yeah. Take home message, I think that it is possible. You have to prioritize. You have to ask for help. You have to delegate. But there is no substitute for reading cover to cover and getting to know what you need to know. There's no shortcut to that. I have not used AI and I haven't gone to that level. And so that is not yet something I can do or will want to do. Thank you, Harsha. Thank you to the BASL. I hope, Harsha, I will be here for a while, but I need to
Thank you.
leave
Thank
at
you.
this point.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Farzana. Thank you so much. Before I move on to Kitsiri, one thing that I would like the participants to focus on through Kitsiri's presentation is, I think hopefully Kitsiri will touch on, based on his, again, long years of experience, what the private sector is looking for from a legal services professional. We had this conversation in the morning, a very quick discussion. And so hopefully, because sometimes I feel whether our orientation towards our customers, whom we call clients, is there a mismatch between when a private sector entity is a client? Sometimes you might be a client if a lawyer, somebody whom I appear for a company, or you might become my client when I'm actually employed by you as a counsel, in-house counsel, and the concept of general counsel. So you have been at both sides of the divide, so to speak. So over to you, Kitsiri.
Thank you, Harsha. Good evening to all of you who are present. I was told that there are law students as well as young lawyers. So I will approach the area that I've been asked to talk on from two angles. One, from the perspective of what you can offer or what the private sector will like to gain from employing a legal professional, as well as from the perspective of being a legal professional and joining a company and doing far more than restricting yourself with regard to being a typical lawyer and providing legal services. So first aspect is that if you're joining a private sector company, you must understand your client essentially is the shareholder. The whole purpose of working in a private sector organization, how you will be judged is how you are able to contribute towards the return on equity of that organization. Private sector organizations will operate on that basis. So therefore, from the perspective of a private sector organization wanting to employ a lawyer, you will be treated as a generalist. Okay, I'm contrasting here from, let's say, if I'm interviewing a person for an actuarial job, your qualification itself is something that I'm looking for in order for you to be able to execute the function that you're required to do so. If I'm hiring you as a chef in one of our hotels, then you're looking at this proficiency. But as a lawyer, you must understand that the role that you're expected to play is a generalist role. The reason why I say that is, the people who will interview you in the private sector will have a typical view of a lawyer who will run to court with a file, if at all, if a case is filed against my company. Okay, they will look at from the perspective of a lawyer who's able to, I'm able to turn to as a person from whom I can get some legal clarity with regard to a operating law. Okay, now the important factor there is that for the rest of your life, there are so many lawyers who join private sector, banks and manufacturing companies and conglomerates and so on and so forth, who will end up their career also being like that. But what I want you to understand is that, see, you may be as a legal officer called to a boardroom to ask about the update of a case. But as lawyers, please understand you have the aptitude and the ability not to be that legal officer, but to be that boardroom member who will call a legal officer or call somebody else for that clarification. So what do you do to achieve that? One aspect is that please understand the fact that you get a legal qualification as a black coat is not something which is considered magical in terms of the private sector. You will be judged, as I mentioned, how you are able to contribute towards the ROE of the company. So continuously, it's important for you to portray a sense of confidence, a sense of knowledge that you're able to achieve with regard to the operations of that company. Otherwise, as I mentioned, you can end up as a paper pusher, as a party who's just adhering to the typical legal advice, which as Harsha mentioned, is being encroached upon by AI. And if I may mention, Harsha, the other area of threat to the legal profession is the accountancy profession. As you know, if you look at the accounting standards and so on, it's the auditors who will interpret that, it's the auditors who will advise. There are lots of legal related advisors and functions that accountancy firms are providing now. So therefore, it is very important from a legal perspective. Okay, one aspect that anybody will look at if you're being interviewed is, of course, are you able to exude confidence? Are you able to sort of reflect positivity in terms of the way you're able to get about things? You must understand, if you're looking from the perspective of offering the ROE that I mentioned, you should be a person who's able to be confident. Please, I mean, the aspect that I would always look at when I interview some person is that it's not the qualification. You may have certain qualifications, but if you have the ability, if you have the confidence, if you have the aptitude, you can learn a lot of things. All of us who are in the private sector are people who have learned the way in which business is done. Now, there is a great opportunity for a lawyer. As you know, any transaction that a business entity or a private sector organization will get into has to get reduced to a document, and you have to sign on that dotted line. So my little advice to all of you who are interested in joining the private sector, be that lawyer who's going to go through that agreement. And in doing so, please understand the transaction. There are lawyers and lawyers who will go through a document and will give their legal perspective to it. You lose so much when that is done. If you're working for a company with let's say a sugar company, if the sugar company is getting into a contract with regard to sale of sugar, understand the process of sugar, understand the risk associated with that relevant business. It could be insurance, it could be securities, it could be a cross-border financial transaction that you're involved in. Please, as a lawyer, you have that opportunity. Understand that transaction and all the risks are associated with that transaction so that you become the person who's able to go and negotiate and who's able to talk about that and talk to the others who matter. Without your knowledge, what happens is that you will acquire the knowledge with regard to different areas of that organization, and you become an expert who can represent. And as lawyers, we have the ability to communicate well. We have the ability to negotiate. Those are skills that you need to make it relevant if you are to succeed in the private sector. In the recent past, most banks, most financial institutions, and most other corporates would tend to people with legal backgrounds to negotiate their issues because of what we as the legal profession has done in taking such a long time to resolve any kind of issue. So more and more corporates as well as banks will turn to the lawyers in order to you should be the go-to person in your company, you and your department, or in your personal capacity as a person who can negotiate properly in order to be able to lead that negotiation. Ultimately, please understand that what is important is that you have to create that value, create that confidence as the person who the company can turn to in terms of going for a discussion, going for a negotiation and resolving a problem without having to go to court. And believe me, because of the issues with the legal profession and the legal laws delays and so on, I sincerely hope my new Chief Justice will be able to make a dent in terms of making these delays to make it better. But as it stands now, these are the solutions that are needed. For a loan, when a bank or a finance company grants a loan these days, they will turn to what is referred to as a loan protection cover from an insurance company, even though they have a security, because they know if the loan goes into default, the realization of that security can take anything from 10 to 20 years sometimes, and that is not something that a private sector organization can live with. Insofar as AI, Harsha, my opinion is a little different in terms of, well, innovation and doing new things has been the way human race has evolved continuously. I believe the people, it's a dragon, right? We're all concerned, we're all scared of this AI. They might take our jobs, but the way I feel, every time there is a disruption from a corporate perspective, there are opportunities. Those who can learn to drive the dragon will be the ones who will lead the way in the future. So just as much as your legal studies, I would advocate, if you have the time, if you have the ability for you to be more attractive to the private sector, look at something like accountancy. If that pleases you, look at something like IT, but without any doubt, master AI. Be up to date in terms of what is AI, how to use AI, make it as a tool, and those of you who are able to use AI will become more efficient, and you'll be able to be employed by the private sector organization with the greatest of value. I will also leave you with a little thought of what the private sector will not want from you. Okay, there are lots of times that we employ young lawyers, young professionals. I mean, don't come to the private sector with a sense of as if you're the greatest gift to humanity. You are not. Okay. From my perspective, you as an individual, whether you like it or not, the greatest property that you own in life is not your car, not your house, is your body. Okay. So if you are not able to, without turning to your parents, if you should be able to sustain and nourish your body with your own income, you should have to have a place where you can house your body, your house. You have to have a vehicle in order to take your body to all these places. Please understand, whatever the money that you earn as a lawyer or a person in the private sector, all your experiences in life, you can enjoy with your body. So ask yourself before you try to correct the world, when you join a company, how to correct how the chairman is walking about or how he's conducting himself. Before all that, those things, ask yourself, am I that individual who has a sustainable mechanism of looking after myself? If you don't, your first port of call is to get to that point. Spend every moment of your time thinking, how is it that I can be a part of the solution for the private sector, whether it is you're in the boardroom, whether you're given a legal case to handle, or whether you're going out for a discussion or negotiation, always think that point. The moment you come to that point, you have made your mark. And once you have made your mark, please understand, private sector organizations will not let you go, and they look after you well. There's so much of room at the top, but there's so much of competition at the bottom by those who will want to change a lot of things before they are able to even stand on their own feet. So go with a sense of humbleness, go with a sense of loyalty, and ensure that you become part of the solution, not part of the problem. Negotiation skills are of great value. Human resources are of great value in terms of the kind of areas that lawyers get involved in. And please don't think any activity when you join a corporate is beneath you. It could be that you will understand about inventory keeping from your storekeeper, but please do that. And that is the kind of knowledge that will give you that edge and give you the ability to function in a boardroom and take decisions. If you ask me, Harsha, and the participants, what do I get paid for? You see, as you start life, you usually get paid for what you do. But before long, you need to come to a stage where you're paid for what you know, for your decision making. Throughout the day, it's the decision making that you'll be looked at. And please understand, as lawyers, as journalists, you always have that aptitude of being the person you are. But the advice, as I said, the last thought I would like to leave all of you with is to say, don't be that typical lawyer, because that typical lawyer's role will be taken by AI, as the presenters after me will talk. Be somebody very much more a resource that is able to take decisions. One of the problems that I see in the private sector as well as in the government sector, possibly because of our education system, we as lawyers, we go and articulate the problem very well, we run to a senior. Don't be that person. Be the person who's able to go with a solution and suggest that solution. Whatever you practice, you become very good. If you practice suggesting solutions to issues and making a sort of positive contribution towards the return on equity of a company, you will be a sought after person who can make a very good career and have a very good life in the private sector. That's all.
Thank you, Kitsiri, and just want to thank you. It was very, very, I'm sure they found it very insightful, to say the least. You will notice that at the bottom of the screen, there's a little icon called Q&A. So if you have any questions, you can post on that so that we will see. But Kitsiri, before I move on to the Dr. Veeravaran, who is now online, I have a question which I'm sure Dr. Veeravaran also will answer. You see, most of our lawyers are exposed to the legal education system that is practiced through the law college and our faculties as is now. Now, that is very much embedded in historical value systems, historical criteria. How does one transition from coming out of a system steeped in tradition and where your assessments may not very well sync with the performance matrices that the private sector or this sort of value creation world is now using. So how does a young lawyer make that shift?
Yeah, I think number one, Harsha, you have to accept the fact that your qualification that you gain in the university or law college or whatever is only a ticket for you to perform. Please understand that the qualification that you acquire is a ticket for you to perform. And how you perform is by continuous learning. You need to learn about the business. You can wear your thinking cap. It's a continuous learning process. And believe me, if you're interested in that kind of activity, it's going to be a very, very rewarding journey for you. If you ask me, the reason why I still, continue to work at LOLC, it's because of the fact that we have a principle here that we will not do any process or any activity for more than 2 years. Even if it is working well, you change it and you get different people to handle. I joined this conglomerate as a legal officer, and now I'm looking after plantations, I'm looking after overseas companies, insurance companies, and so on and so forth. At LOLC, we are the largest producer of tea in the world. The guy who's in charge of tea is the person who joined us as the HR manager. Our IT manager, Conrad Dyers, who joined us a long time ago, is the guy who's running our finance companies. So this is the kind of challenges that we will expose you to, and a lot of the private sectors look at possibilities of looking at issues from a new set of eyes so that novelty can happen, and that is how growth is continued. So from a young lawyer's perspective, I'm not asking you to unlearn everything that you learned at law college or the university, but please understand that the reality in the world is to be able to get into transactions, understand what exactly is the value proposition that your company or your organization is interested in, and see how you can contribute by learning very much more than the others. Use AI to understand. It's very simply a lot of knowledge can be gathered by using tools which are now available to you as opposed to the time that we sort of started. So that is the only way. The time that you play probably on the internet, playing games or watching, unwanted stuff, at least 10-15% of the time, try to learn what exactly is AI. How do you AI? If you're going into a discussion with regard to an insurance policy, what is insurance? What is reinsurance? These are all factors that you need to equip yourself. And I'm telling you, there's no end to that because you need to continuously learn. And that becomes a very exciting journey because every day you learn something new, and that is how you keep yourself relevant. So if you go with your criminal procedure code and with your Roman law and that sort of thing, you're not going to be very practical. And in that respect, Harsha, another issue that I have is that even the time that I was the Securities and Exchange Commission, I was suggesting some of these new areas like, the personal PDP laws, the Securities and Exchange Commission laws, the new AML, none of these things are actually taught. So therefore, these are areas that you need to sort of learn and be relevant so that you become an added value to your organization. And, I would always advise a lawyer, if you want to really succeed and come to the top where you're in the boardroom, you're being looked up to take decisions, arm yourself with all these areas of knowledge. The greater that you acquire those things and the faster that you acquire those things, greater will be your value in the private sector as a great decision maker.
Thank you, Kitsiri. And I think our traditional legal education system, with all its limitations, does prepare you to handle any subject. That's one of the beauties of
Absolutely.
the combination. So therefore, I think the areas that Kitsiri mentioned and so many other areas, we don't need until some formal system teaches it to us. We have the capacity to learn on our own if you have the discipline. So I think, and now the information is available at your fingertip, YouTube, podcast, to say the least. So there is no excuse for us not to gather that knowledge and that perspective moving forward. Even at my age, I've just pulled a book off my table, which is Dummies, AI Prompts for Dummies. So you never stop learning, and as a president, even as a president's council, I finished a course on AI governance, which has nothing to do with the technical side of it and how LLM. Basically, I was thinking, can I cross-examine somebody who is using an AI model who discriminates when employment recruitment comes? You always find a way to make it relevant to your work. Thank you, Kitsiri. And I think this is an appropriate time to cross over to Dr. Sanjeeva Veeravarana. He's not a lawyer, but he very kindly agreed to share his perspective. And one of the reasons that we were very keen to have him, that he is, in a very positive sense, a disruptor, if I may say so. Because if you know about WSO2, it's a global company. While the rest of us were trying to figure out how to make it here in Sri Lanka, the IT sector, led by companies like WSOT, has taken Sri Lanka to the world stage and has linked us to global value chains in a way that we never thought was possible. So, and sometimes I feel that these companies who are based in Sri Lanka, entrapped in our legal and regulatory systems, can be supported more if the legal service professionals are able to see things in a different perspective, understand the value they bring, and how we can be a better collaborator and a better partner and a better value creator in those sectors as well. So, Dr. Sanjeev, I would like to invite you to take the floor, maybe to talk about those, and also give us a bit of your perspective on. I know you do have a lot of legal services providing in your company. How long before you can replace them with probably infinitely more knowledgeable and better models that have reached the point of singularity faster than why the Google technical director predicted? Over to you, Sanjeeva. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Harsha, and thanks everyone for inviting me to participate in this. So as you said, as Harsha said, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about law, but I'm a computer science trained person. I am still very much a computer scientist. I run a company, but I'm not a very traditional business leader at all in any way, sense or form. But we do have, I think, 8 lawyers in the company now, operating in Sri Lanka and US and Brazil and somewhere else, if I remember right. And we have operations we have customers in 93 countries. So we've signed contracts in 93 countries with the legal team that we have. And we have legal presence in 12 countries, and we have employees in about 20 now, right? And so the message that I always take with our lawyers is, we always have, as you can imagine, we have the side of the company that wants to do whatever it takes to do business. And then the other side that says, no, you can't do that. And the lawyer's job is find the middle ground in some fashion, at least in WSO2. So in our case, so and the conversation I've had with our legal team always has been, look, the easiest way to protect the company, which is the responsibility of the legal side of the company, is to say you can't do anything. It's also the easiest way to make sure we all go home with no money in the bank, because do nothing, no money, right? Simple. And the other extreme is, sure, say yes to everything, whether it is giving unlimited liability or it is signing off on some risky terms or whatever the thing it is. And of course, everybody has to find a middle ground. Right? It's good that there's a yin and a yang kind of pull, one side pulling this way, one side pulling the other way. But the way you do business successfully is when you find the middle ground. And of course, there are boundaries you never cross. Legal compliance is paramount. You don't mess around with that in any jurisdiction. But there's a lot of room for you to negotiate, and that finding the right judgment is a business challenge. That if you're going to play a lawyer in a business context, that's what you have to do, right? And so we are not a traditional structured company. We're very untraditional, very flat, very direct. We communicate with each other directly and openly, and we challenge everything. But one thing I do want to talk about is when people my parents' generation, my father passed away at 85. My mother still, she's 84. She's there, and their generation was a generation that went to studied. My father never went to university. He did city and guilds and then joined the army and got education through the army. But you learned a particular skill set, particular area. You became a lawyer. My mother was a teacher, became a teacher, or became an army officer, and that was your life basically in that era. And until you retired, you kept that same career. May not be the same job, but often, in fact, the same job, right? It was that era when people took one job and stayed until retirement. I used to work for IBM research before I started WSO2. IBM has people who worked there for 35, 40 years. Today, the world has come to a point where the average tenure in a tech company is 2 to 3 years. And most young people today are expected to change their career, not their job, 5 to 7 times. This is US numbers, right? Career. So you start off as as somebody doing sales, then you run marketing, then maybe you run IT, maybe you run law, right? There are people, and obviously, if you're running law, you have you can't play certain roles unless you pass the bar or whatever in that country. But WSO2 science papers in 93 countries. We don't have legal presence in those 93 countries. We apply reasonable judgment and take the risk and sign papers, right? Actually, the worst case scenario was once about 10, maybe 10 plus years ago, we had a customer in Russia who had to sign in Russian, and we didn't have anybody who could read Russian. We used Google Translate to English, and we signed both sides. They also agreed to sign both sides. So English we understood, Russian we didn't understand. They kind of understood the English, not the Russian. And we said, okay, we'll sign on both sides, and if there's a dispute, we'll deal with it at that point, right? And so you adapt from those things. So the thing is the concept of career no longer exists in my view. What you learn when you become a lawyer, or when you become a software engineer, or an architect, or whatever thing it is you learn a skill set about, in my opinion, mostly about reasoning and critical thinking, and as Harsha said in his opening, in the case of lawyers, you learn communication. This is why most of the politicians in parliament are lawyers, because you guys know how to communicate better than most people. Right? That's not a good thing in my opinion, but that's not the topic for this discussion. In engineering, in computer science, in software engineering, what you learn is problem solving. And just like you don't, when you learn problem solving, you can solve any kind of problem, not just because you learn techniques of problem solving. You learn how to address problems, how to break them apart, how to take them piece by piece and solve it, how to break it into orthogonal dimensions and so forth, is what you learn in that process. Similarly, when you go to law school or when you become a lawyer, you learn a set of things. On one end, it is the technical depth of the current legal system and case history. And I apologize, I don't know anything about law, so I don't know, you learn a bunch of stuff like that, right? But you also learn a methodology, an underlying foundational principle behind why you have legal systems and so on. And those things, whether it is AI or human beings, those things will continue. And there's actually a really good book. I'm a very slow book reader. I read lots of stuff. It's called, as you can see, it's called Genesis. It's written by Henry Kissinger and Craig Mundy, who was, I think, number 2 in Microsoft, and Eric Schmidt, who was the chairman of Google. It's an excellent book. And one of the things it talks about is the impact on politics and on security and so on. When rule-based decision-making becomes possible, what it will do to society. So this is I know there's a lot of conversation about AI, and I don't want to pile on just on that topic, but what AI is in the current form is a way to have studied a whole bunch of things, information, and be able to come to reasoning with that, right? So in the newer models that you can use, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever the one that you choose, DeepSeek, anything, they have all read more legal papers than any of you will ever read. They have read more computer science than I will ever read or even come close to knowing about. So their fundamental knowledge of all things that exist, sorry, let me rephrase that. Knowledge is not the right word. Their fundamental recall capability of everything that exists is infinitely better than any of us or all of us combined. So that is why the book that Harsha showed is very important, because you have a thing that has a recall, so you need to ask it the right question to get the right recall. right? Prompting is an art form, because if you ask the wrong question, you get a wrong answer. AI is sort of the ultimate oracle that knows everything, but if you ask it a question the wrong way, it'll give you a wrong answer. If you ask the question in the right way, a large language model can give you the right answer. So the challenge has now become learning this kind of reasoning, and yet we are dealing with, in today's world of AI, large language models, actually there's no intelligence at all. They just memorize everything and they know how to predict what is the next best thing to say given what has been said, right? Actually, and the way they predict it is by just having read everything. And when you give, that's why the prompt is important. You give some context saying, hey, I'm asking about the legal system in Sri Lanka. And now that eliminates legal system in China, in India, in the US, in Japan, in Israel, which is not a good legal system, or whatever the hell it is they have. It'll eliminate all of that. And now you're focusing on legal system Sri Lanka. Then you ask something about, okay, I have a traffic violation. What are my options for how I would fight it? Then it'll read, it kind of searches everything it has read to that and gives you an answer. So it is a memorization and an incredible recall. The problem, of course, is that most of us as human beings are also most of the time operating on recall. We remember something and we play it back, right? And we reason a little bit based on recall, but most of the time, human beings don't create something absolutely new, right? Most work, whether it is your work or mine, there's no difference. We have learned something. We have some stuff we have learned from our own acquisition of knowledge, things we read all the time. As Harsha said, continuous learning is just no choice. That is the only way to live now. And then you can recall that and apply it, right? And AI is really, really good at that. So the go forward thing for people, I think, is really, again, thinking about careers. The concept of a career, in my view, is outdated. You don't think about, well, I'm going to join this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. I can't remember the exact wording, but there's some line that says the kids that are in school today, when they are finished, they will do a job that has not yet been invented using knowledge that has not been generated. Right? So how do you prepare for that? Only way you can prepare is by learning fundamentals, learning reasoning, learning logical thinking, creative thinking, communication, and so forth. All of that you learn in computer science, all of that you learn while studying law. If you step back from the details of what you're studying, right? So those fundamentals are what will drive people forward. And you have to kind of evolve continuously to play in the marketplace that we are heading into. But at the same time, the impact of AI and impact of technology in general. AI is just one piece of technology. There are many. Technology is a ever-moving thing. There's a book called Sapiens by Homo Sapiens by Yuval Harari. He's actually Israeli guy. He's an Israeli historian. Very good book. It talks about sort of the way human society has developed over the years. And one of the things is sort of this way of how legal systems are developed, how money developed, how narrative developed, and so on. So we are now in an era where the information, now I'm talking to you here, but I could just as well be an AI version of me talking to you, right? And we're pretty much at the point where you wouldn't know the difference, whether it is me or an AI version of me. Right? And if it's not there today, it will be there by next year or something. And you, of course, remember during COVID time, we had, you could give testimony online, right? I think even Sri Lanka loved that for a while, right? Because people couldn't come to court. If AI had developed enough, I could make somebody who looks like me and can give whatever testimony you want, right? And I wouldn't be able to deny, or you wouldn't be able to detect it. It'll have the same accent, the same voice, the same hairstyle, same dress style, everything. And you wouldn't know that it is not that person. So this deep fake concept of information. So the thing that, to me, the thing that always remains is the foundational problem-solving skills, foundational critical thinking, analytical reasoning, communication, ability to make judgment calls. In the current state of knowledge, state of research, state of technology of AI, it has no judgment. It is purely, it seems like it has judgment. It's actually not. What it's doing is not judgment. It is pattern-based text generation, pattern-based reasoning. That's not judgment. Gut feel, models don't have gut feel yet. are we going to get there? Ray Kurzweil, I think he's called the futurist in Google. His expectations 2029. We are going to get there. I don't know this 2029 or when that is, might be sooner. And we will get to a point where there is super intelligence that is way beyond us. Then there's actually a recent paper that was published about a week ago called Economics of AI Agents. It's on archive.arxiv.org. And it talks about AI agents. We kind of think of AI as going to either work for humanity or against humanity. And there's going to be another class of AI that is not interested in humanity, just works for itself, just as much as we work for ourselves. And then sustenance of that agent becomes the most important thing. Not whether I harm a human being or not harm a human being, but just that AI must continue, right? And you've seen movies, I'm sure, about the AI doesn't want to die and so on, right? So similar concepts will come along, but that judgment and ability to interact and create. So as a lawyer, I think finding the right balance. Now, again, Harsha said he has done a course on AI governance. But this is a very important area because there's a lot of conversation all over the world. What is the right balance that we want to have for security? For nuclear, the nuclear was developed. Immediately, the nuclear powers created a non-proliferation architecture, created prevention of knowledge dissemination. There was a story that came out some months ago that said the US had killed off multiple areas of physics completely. They defunded, maybe they killed the scientists, I don't know, whatever it was. They killed off multiple areas of physics in order to make sure that nuclear knowledge doesn't get proliferated. Now, AI could be one of those risky things, but no one knows yet what that path is going to be. And I think in the legal profession, you have a very important role to play in shaping that. Even Sri Lanka is struggling with what is the right balance of things to have at every level of technology adoption. And AI is just one more of those things that we'll have to deal with. So I think I'm going to stop there. I'm happy. I will hang around and I'm happy to take questions or something if you have later. But for me, again, my thing is, don't think about 20, 30-year careers. Don't look at Harsha and say, okay, that's the path that you want to be on. You don't know what the next 20, 30 years are going to be, right? And I think you carve your own path. And that's also exciting that you're not set on a single path, not on your, I love that picture he showed of his senior person and you becoming the same, right? But it's going to be a whole different path that has not yet been invented, using knowledge that has not yet been created, using tools that don't yet exist. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev, and thank you very much for balancing fear with opportunity, the yin and the yang, or the Wei Ji, as you would put it. Thank you for that. And I think the takeaway for me from your presentation is that world will change. I think Kitsiri also made that change, made that comment. And change will always bring opportunities as well as heartaches. So even I think another key takeaway for me is that even in this sort of what we lawyers would call as very high tech, sort of the cutting edge technology sphere, there's a lot of work for lawyers. There's a lot of work, those fundamental questions that only people with certain disciplines will answer, the fundamental questions about existential threats, life, justice, all those things. So I think it's up to us to forge a way forward to scan the available, to sort of scan the horizon, understand what's out there, and prepare ourselves in terms of moving into those areas and getting it. And before I move on to Rukshan, I would like to pose a question. Actually, it's posed by Mr. Nalinda into this President's Council. He says that Kitsiri was a batchmate of his, and Sanjeeva is a relation of his. So he's very happy that he was able to join and listen for this presentation. And the question he has asked is, how do you be a bridge between legal profession and the two sectors that two of you represented today? So I think you kind of answered it. He has posed a question to me, unfortunately. So one thing that I would like to share, since it's a career guidance, is that, as Sanjeeva mentioned from early on, I was lucky. I started my career in the private sector before I joined the Attorney General's office and then moved on to private practice. And something that was taught to me in the private sector was don't think of a career more than 5 years. Because if you do, you're going to be outdated and you're going to be irrelevant. So since then, it was a challenge of how to keep yourself updated with everything that's possible. And the bridge I created between legal, sort of a strict legal profession, and then moving into this was getting that additional knowledge in the form of an MBA and another degree in economics. So you basically understood or tried to understand how the world operates. And that was very, very helpful. And in fact, I think my first involvement with WSO2 was also when I was doing negotiation skills training for you guys long time ago, come in as an attorney at law. So basically the point is, as lawyers, it's applied law. How do we apply our knowledge to give a solution to a human problem or a business problem? So every time a client comes to you, it's a business deal gone wrong or a business deal they want to forge, and they want you to reduce the risks and to be a partner in unlocking the value. We sort of tend to kill the value because of those two continuums that we are stuck with. Either you say yes to everything or you say no to anything. Instead of finding the middle ground or maybe completely changing the mindset. So in that context, if I am to ask both you, Sanjeeva and Kitsiri, if you are to tell two things to the participants, saying, look, if you can do two things, I will find you more attractive to serve in my sector. What would those two be? Maybe we can start with Sanjeeva.
Okay, I was hoping you would say Kitsiri so I can think about that answer, but that's all right. So I would say again that flexibility of judgment, that you learn, you understand that in the context of a business structure, the goal is to make things possible and get things done, not to say no, because if you say no and you don't do anything, then we all lose in the end of it. So our goal is to find common ground. Whatever the thing that you're trying to find, debate about is common ground. So I always look for people who demonstrate and who can practice really good listening skills, not just to listen. A lot of people listen to hear, but not listen to understand. And it's complicated because you already have a position in your head and you're just like immediately going at it, and then you don't hear what the other side is saying. So find that compromise, because and also we are very multicultural. We have employees in 20 countries that speak different accents, different languages, and in those kind of operations, and we're a small company. I mean, we're much, LOS is a much larger company, and when you have all kinds of different interests, being able to really understand the people is, to me, is critical to being successful in the legal profession in my domain. The other thing is also the things that matter in the world of software, for example, is very different from the things that matter in other domains of legal matters. So intellectual property, licensing, these are not things I think that most people learn in law school. Intellectual property probably, but I'm sure it is, but not software licensing, for example. Right? Software licensing plays a key part of how you make software businesses work, right? And understanding the nuances of that, and again, you don't have to know it beforehand, you learn it. But being able to learn and adapt to these things is, I would say, those are two things that you would need to have.
Thank you. Kitsiri?
Hi. Yeah. So primarily, as far as question Nalin, my good friend, has asked, one area that, I mean, as a lawyer, there's a disciplined training that you go through, and there's a lot of knowledge that you acquire in terms of the legal system and how to resolve issues and so on and so forth. Private sector would want the legal risk. The private sector is it's an organization that is trying to manage all the types of external risks, and legal becomes one area of risk, legal compliance and matters like that. So when there's an issue, taken for example, you're wanting to go and make an investment in, let's say, Africa or wherever, there'll be always issues that would come forward where it'll need innovative solutions. You are paid not to, as Sanjeeva mentioned very correctly, not to throw the rule book and say, look, you can't do this. You are paid to take legal risks. You need to understand that. I mean, any lawyer would be able to tell a corporate, oh, according to these, you can't do this. But that is not the reason as to why a I would pay a lawyer to work in one of my companies would be to advise me what is the level of risk I can take. And that risk should be an acceptable level of risk. So that's a massive judgment call that you're able to make. So you need to use your knowledge of law and the networking that you have, the connections that you have with, say, regulators, with compliance officers, and so on and so forth, and come up with those innovative solutions which will enable the corporate to find a mechanism of going forward. Finally, all these things will be judged, you will be judged, and your contribution will be judged based on the bottom line and the way you used the least amount of resources in order to resolve an issue and acquire those numbers. So that is the bridge that I would take. And I would like to emphasize what I mentioned in terms of you are paid to take informed legal decisions with regard to risk. So if you are not able to take that risk, whether you're advising a client, I suppose it will be the same. Your corporate, you hold the accountability to advise the corporate, yes, this is something that we can do. Let's do this innovative thing. This is the risk I'm recommending that you should take. And to grade that risk and understand, okay, fine, can we make this investment? Can we go ahead with this project? That is the risk that I'm talking of. And a successful lawyer or a successful legal professional to be of value to a corporate, that essentially is what you need to practice. And in order to be able to make right decisions with regard to acceptable levels of risk, your proficiency, your knowledge on the area of work, your proficiency with regard to legal statutes and the way in which operates, as well as if you ask me, for example, going to court, as we all professionals would know, your knowledge of the lawyers who are having a good relationship with the judges, all those things are of value. This is a subjective science. This is not an objective science like medicine. So that is the reason as to why legal professionals who are able to make such decisions are, put it mildly, looked after by the private sector very well as well. So that's the way to proceed. It happens, as I mentioned, the LOLC, we are present in 27 countries. So this application goes not only Sri Lankan, but as well as cross-border. How do we take decisions? How do we take legal risks? Acceptable of risks will give your organization an edge compared to so many others.
Thank you, Kitsiri. I think now I would like to move on to Rukshan. Rukshan, thank you for joining us all the way from London. We invited Rukshan because he recently left Sri Lanka. He went over to Dubai and then from there to the UK. He was instrumental in helping the Bar Association through one of its committees for us to get some level of exemptions for our qualifications from qualifying as a solicitor in the UK. So that's his involvement, and we invited him particularly because, can you tell us, one is when you sort of break away from your home country as a lawyer with a qualification from Sri Lanka, what were the sort of the trepidations that you felt or the challenges, and how you prepared yourself to overcome them, and how did you feel about yourself competing with other international colleagues, probably vying for a few available jobs in hotspots like Dubai and London? Over to you, Rukshan.
Thank you, Mr. Fernando. Hi, everybody. I'll introduce myself, although Mr. Harsh Fernando also did introduce me. So I'm Rukshan. I started my career in Sri Lanka with Paul Ratnayak Associates, and I moved to the UAE in 2023, and I now work at a law firm in the UK. So I've kind of been tasked with providing some advice about to attorneys who wish to seek employment overseas, and that's based on my experience. So I will answer some of those questions. So the first kind of, I think, challenge that one would face when you are trying to move abroad is the qualifications, because generally it's the qualifications that you need to practice law overseas, and getting those in order before you actually make the move across. Secondly, I mean, sometimes there's a mindset change. You have to kind of consider certain things, that the culture will be different, the mentality will be different, and you have to kind of adapt to that as well. And then, of course, another challenge ultimately is this kind of the strategic moves that you have to take, which are basically where do you apply, who do you go to, and how you make moves to basically, I mean, from your plan of action, basically, to actually making it materialize. So I'll start with the first question, which is like, how does one set about obtaining your qualifications to practice law? So I was in the UAE and then I moved to the UK. But so I'll start with, based on my experience, how it was moving across the UAE. And actually, it was very easy to move across the UAE simply because the attorney at law qualification is enough. So law firms and companies in the Gulf countries generally will accept the foreign qualifications of lawyers from other jurisdictions. And when I say the Gulf countries, I'm talking about the UAE, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Bahrain, and Kuwait. And there's a lot of opportunity throughout the Gulf region within law firms and also within companies working in-house. And there's a culture of hiring expatriates to work within their countries, and they very often recruit from abroad. So, in that sense, actually, as an attorney at law, you have a very good opportunity there because they're always looking to recruit from abroad. And just being a qualified lawyer in itself, you don't need to do anything. You can simply go quite easily into the market. You can start applying for jobs and you can practice law in the region. The one kind of restriction or maybe hurdle that Sri Lankan attorneys at law may face is if you're a litigation lawyer, because litigation lawyers can't appear before the local courts in, like, for example, in the Middle East. And that's because you need to be able to speak Arabic and you generally need to be you need to be a local, basically. So, so for litigation lawyers in Sri Lanka, I mean, there are still opportunities. You kind of have to look a little bit closer. So look at law firms with international disputes teams. Arbitration is very kind of popular and common within the Middle East region, because international businesses tend to resolve most of their disputes through arbitration because it saves them having to go to the local courts where things are conducted in Arabic. And then last but not least, a lot of these kind of Gulf countries have financial free zones, and they have their own jurisdiction and generally sometimes also have their own courts. So, for example, like you have the DIFC in Dubai, that's the Dubai International Financial Center, or you have the ADGM, that's the Abu Dhabi Global Market in Abu Dhabi, and they have their own jurisdiction, they have their own courts, own law, and a lot of it is based on the English common law. So, in that sense, actually, it's something that Sri Lankan attorneys at law can probably relate to, because we've also kind of very familiar with the common law jurisdiction and also the laws of England and Wales. So in terms of the Middle East, it's very simple. And actually, I thought for me, it was a really, really great move. And I would highly recommend it, especially if you want to get international exposure. It's a very, I'm not saying it's easy, but it is generally quite a very achievable market to go into. Now, I've now moved across to England. I work at a law firm in the UK now, and England is a little bit more difficult. I think because they generally like lawyers that have UK-based experience. But I mean, I would say don't let that dissuade you, because in my case, look, I don't have UK-based experience, but now I've been employed at a firm here. It just requires a little bit of, I think, first getting some international exposure. If you've got a bit of international exposure, they're a little bit more likely to take you on board. And then, of course, if you're absolutely brilliant, I think any firm will take you on. You just have to be really, really great. And if you can show a good academic track record, having worked on great deals or whatever it is, then I think any firm will kind of really, really consider you. Now, okay, in terms of qualifying in the UK, the first kind of obstacle that you need to do is to pass the solicitor's qualifying examination. So Mr. Harsha Fernando explained that we got some exemptions for Sri Lankan attorneys at law, and that was because now the SQE, it's called the SQE, the Solicitors Qualifying Examination, that has replaced the old practice route of passing the LPC, which is the legal practice course, and then completing a training contract. So that's totally been replaced. And this SQE exam is administered by the SRA, and the SRA is the Solicitors Regulation Authority, and they are well, it's in the name, isn't it? They are the authority that regulates solicitors in the UK. So the SQE comprises of two assessments, SQE1 and SQE2. And SQE1 is basically two multiple choice tests, and they assess the ability to identify certain legal principles and apply them to client problems and transactions. It's a computer-based exam, and it can be sat at test centers worldwide. SQE2, on the other hand, tests the more practical aspects of law. It consists of 16 written and oral tests, such as advocacy, client interviewing, and negotiation. And it assesses a candidate's practical legal skills, like I mentioned. And certain tests of the SQE2 are only conducted in the UK, so you'd have to be in the UK to do those tests. Whereas some of the other tests, like especially the written stuff, can be done at test centers worldwide. Now, in terms of a Sri Lankan attorney at law getting qualified as a solicitor of England and Wales, the Solicitors Regulation Authority, the SRA, requires you to do a number of things, and I'll kind of just go through it. So first and foremost, and this is not in any particular order, by the way, because you can still accumulate work experience and all that type of thing, but I'll just go through the kind of the key obstacles, the key things that you need to overcome. So the first one is to pass SQE1. Which is that computer-based test that I mentioned. The fees are approximately 785,000 rupees, so not particularly cheap. And as far as I know, they can be sat in Sri Lanka. And I say as far as I know because when I was sitting for the SQE, it had just it was brand new, so there was barely any information, and no information online indicated that there was any test center available in Sri Lanka. So I was fully expecting to have to book a test center in India or the UAE. And when I went in there and was trying to book, I saw a test center in Sri Lanka, and I was like, hallelujah. And I basically booked a test center in Sri Lanka, and I did my SQE1 in Sri Lanka. So in theory, I mean, you'll have to look into it. I looked into it before this webinar. It still doesn't indicate that Sri Lanka is a test center, but I know better because from my own personal experience, I've ended up doing my SQE1 in Sri Lanka. So first of all, passing the SQE1, it's not particularly an easy exam. There's a time constraint, of course, and it's difficult in the sense that it asks you for the best answer. So you might have a lot of options that are all correct, but it asks you for the best choice answer because it tests your knowledge at the level of a newly qualified lawyer in the UK who would have 2 years of a training contract. So in my opinion, I used a SQE course provider to help me study for SQE1. I did initially try to do it by myself, and I think in theory you should be able to, study for it yourself and pass it. But it does really, really help when you have an SQE1 course provider, and of course, any fees for that would be separate. And in addition to the SQE1 fees that you would be paying to the SRA. So that's also not particularly cheap. I wouldn't, but I would recommend it. I went with Barbary, they're quite good. But then again, there are also other very reputed providers like BPP or the University of Law. I think you just have to research for yourself which provider will suit your budget. I think that's number one. And then number two, which one kind of suits your study methodology as well. Okay, so that's SQE1. Then there's SQE2. Now, like Mr. Harsh Fernando explained, all attorneys at law in Sri Lanka are now exempt from SQE2, and that's because the Bar Association submitted a successful application to the SRA. And basically, I must say that Mr. Harsha Fernando should get a lot of the credit for it. We both worked on that application for several hours over several days, and in the middle of power cuts because there was an economic crisis in the country, and he sacrificed a lot of his time, like in the midst of like doing work for clients as well. He sacrificed a lot of his time to kind of for us to put this application together, and I always was pestering him to kind of come over and work on the application, but he was very good about it. And also, Mr. Rajiv Amrasurya, and Mr. Saleh Pires. Both of them supported us a lot in getting the application well through the Bar Association in the first place, and then finally submitting it to the SRA. So I think a lot of attorneys at law can be very grateful to the people that contributed towards getting this exemption, because I mean you have to, first of all, you avoid having to prepare and sit for 16 oral and written tests. I mean that in itself is hard work, and then also the SQE2 fees alone are 1.2 million rupees. So that's a lot of money that you pretend that you save, and also you have to kind of go over to the UK to do the SQE2. So that's visas, flights, and accommodation, and that's all a lot of money, excluding tuition fees that you may even need to kind of for an SQE2 provider. So count yourself lucky that the SQE2 exemption applies now for Sri Lankan attorneys at law. So the next requirement, apart from passing SQE1, is to then complete 18 months of post-qualified experience. And that is because the UK generally requires 2 years of work experience to qualify as a solicitor. But because of this Bar Association's application, we kind of put the point that we have a 6 months apprenticeship period that all attorneys at law are basically that they undertake prior to qualification. So the SRA has adjusted that time basically. So we have our 6 months apprenticeship, which they take into account, and you just have to top it up with 18 months of post-qualified experience. And then in essence, you've met the work experience criteria to qualify as a solicitor. And so you'll need you'll need letters from your senior lawyers, and they'll need to provide proof of their admission certificate and a certificate of good standing. So that is also part of, there's loads of criteria that you can find on the Solicitors Regulation Authority website, so check that out. And then also on top of that, as with most legal professions, you have to meet certain character and suitability requirements. So that means that you have to prove that you have good character, that you don't have a criminal record. You yourself will have to provide a certificate of good standing from the Supreme Court. I had to do all of that. So and it has to be within 3 months of the time that you applied to be admitted. And then another one is the English language requirement. So if you're exempt from SQE2, which attorneys at law are, you must prove your proficiency in the English language. And you can do that in 2 ways, or numerous ways, actually. One, if you've done a law degree in English. So, for example, those who have gone to the Royal Institute and have their degree from a UK-based degree, you're good basically at that point. You just need to submit that, verify your degree, and then you've met the English language criteria. Or alternatively, if you can prove that your attorney at law qualification was taught and assessed in English, then they will recognize that as well. And I suspect that you'd have to go to the law college and ask them to confirm in a letter that you were assessed and taught in English. And that's because, of course, they also do exams in Sinhala and in Tamil. And then last but not least, if you can't do either of those two things, you just have to pass a language test at the required level, something that's recognized by the SRA, such as IELTS, and then you meet the English language requirement. And then after you've done all of that, you just apply for admission as a solicitor. You obtain your practicing certificate, because that's important, get the practicing certificate. And then you are on the roll of solicitors and you are able to practice. And so I feel like I'm going really over time now, but I'll be quite quick. In terms of mindset changes, when you do go abroad, I think the most important thing for me is actually probably business development and networking. I think as a young lawyer, business development is totally important. And this kind of alludes to what Mr. Kitsiri Gunawardhan was talking about, because he's talking about the kind of the value that you bring, the financial value that you bring to your shareholders in your company and your firm. And ultimately money talks. And if you can bring clients in, you will be very, very valuable to your employer. And so definitely network, definitely do a lot of business development, join associations that are like chambers of commerce, or associate with other professionals that can refer work to you, like accountants, financial advisors. If you're in employment law, you might associate with HR managers. And so look to do that business development, and also look for changes in the law, for example. That in itself, when things are changing, your lawyers are going to be needed. And then also just kind of generally have a mindset of being an asset to your employer. And in terms of strategic moves, I'll finish up really quickly. strategic moves to take. Obviously, it goes without saying that you should research and set a timeline for action. I did a lot of research on the SRA's website, but then when it came to actually getting the jobs abroad, I found that recruiters, international recruiters, were very useful. And so you can contact them through LinkedIn, look at the legal websites, legal recruitment websites, and email recruiters in your area. For example, they might be a corporate recruiter or an employment recruiter, and get in touch that way, because they kind of do the work for you and then will try and get you into positions. And a couple of the positions that I got, including the position that I got here in the UK, was through a recruiter. So don't underestimate the importance of them. I know it's a bit it's uncommon, and I was applying for jobs on websites like one normally does on LinkedIn, but it is the difference. And I have a lot of colleagues and friends in UK law firms, and they have always said that anybody that gets the job generally tends to do it through recruiters. So I would do that. But if it comes to the Middle East, also go through recruiters. There are plenty of recruiters out there. But there's two websites that I would recommend also trying, which is gulftalent.com and Byte, so BAYT.com. And if you can look through them, you might find a lot of opportunities, and you can contact me on LinkedIn as well if you need any information, and I'd be happy to help. That's about it from me.
Thank you, Rukshan. I'm sure a lot of them must be taking notes. I think I'm glad that you gave us almost in the form of 2 case studies of Dubai and the UK, and the elaboration that you provided in terms of what you need to satisfy in your home country, and then how do you sort of set about in your host country. So thank you for that. And you hopefully gave a lot of hope for the young attorneys after some of the sort of positive and negatives that the speakers before you, including myself, said about the changing market conditions. So I'm now going to hand back the controls to Isuri. Maybe Isuri, you could take us through the questions, and then if you have time, hand it back to me and we could conclude the seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So we do have some questions in. So I think this question would be best suited to be answered by Mr. Kistri Gunawardana. So the question asks, if we have the attorney at law qualification along with a BSc degree, will that be recognized in joining as a corporate lawyer?
Oh, yes, most definitely. But when you said a degree, what would really be of value for organizations in terms of taking decisions which are of much greater value, where you will be equipped to take the decision, would be accountancy or IT. That's a sort of view that I have. But your ability to gain that proficiency other than law, it could be, say, marketing, it could be business management. So, I mean, that's exactly the way to look at in order for you to be able to advise a company. So, most definitely, yes, but preference would be with regard to accountancy related and IT related along with law. That would be the combination that I would recommend, apart from, of course, understanding how to use AI as a tool to your benefit.
Thank you, sir. So I believe the next question is in relation to obtaining solicitor or barrister qualifications. So I believe Mr. Rukshan Athpattu would be the best person to answer this question. So it says, dear sir, could you please mention whether there is a possibility to get into being a solicitor or barrister abroad only with an attorney at law qualification and a BSc degree? Or is it necessary to have a LLB? I believe sir has already answered this question to an extent, but I believe they want to know whether BSc degree would be any help in that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. The truth of the matter is actually that you can still be a solicitor without any other qualifications apart. I mean, as long as you have your attorney at law qualification, you can definitely become a solicitor, and that's all that's required of you. There's nothing more that's required. So in that sense, you just need to get everything done in terms of attorney at law qualification, but then on top of that, of course, pass the requirements required by the SRA.
Thank you, sir. So this question I would leave it open. Actually, I would not direct it to any of the panelists, but it says, what would be the ideal educational qualifications that can be acquired in Sri Lanka that would be preferred to develop a career in arbitration in Dubai? Any panelists would like to take up that question?
Let me try and
Harsha would-
attempt. I'm not a. Oh, sorry. Is Mr. Kitsuri Gunawardena trying to talk? Go
I'm
ahead, Mr.
sorry.
Gunawardena.
No, I'm sorry. I thought Harsha would be the best one to take up that question.
Well, you see, as I'm sure Rukshan can supplement it, arbitration is also another service that is being offered by lawyers. So I believe if to build up a career, you have to have clients who have confidence in you to retain you. So the first thing they will obviously look at is your legal basic qualification coupled with your experience. Then, if you want to pursue a career in arbitration, there are so many organizations that offer accreditation, charters. Now, I'm not saying that one is better than the other, but so how to set about it? Start with your basic qualification, understand the arbitration market, then do further studies in that. If you can get a charter, do that. But most importantly, it's your experience. And as Rukshan mentioned, how you market your experience in a way that gives confidence to prospective clients to retain you to handle the arbitrations. Rukshan, maybe you could supplement.
Honestly, no, you just hit the nail on the head. That's it. I have nothing more to add.
I believe we have one last final question. So I may direct this to Mr. Rukshan as well. So it says, what are the areas of law that are in demand in Dubai and UK in the present times?
Now that's very hard to understand in the sense that, or hard to give an answer to, because it really just the need of companies and law firms just changes all the time. But I mean, generally speaking, you do have a lot more demand in your areas like corporate law or employment law or commercial property and things like that, international disputes. These are generally the areas that you would kind of see a lot of recruitment going on. I think especially in corporate and commercial law, there's a lot of movement, but that's because a lot of businesses require, they require commercial or corporate lawyers basically. And you have a lot more companies and businesses operating in the UAE or even in the UK. And simply for that reason, there's a lot more opportunity for corporate lawyers. But honestly, there's enough and more opportunity. You just need to like really, really look for it. Unless I mean, if you're in niche areas even, there's still so much opportunity. There's always a need for like an intellectual property lawyer and things like that. So there's no one area.
All right, thank you so much. I believe that's all the questions we have so far. So I would like to give the session back to Mr. Harsha Fernando for concluding remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Isiri. Actually, we have 20 minutes left, which I think is great. I didn't think that we would be able to keep to time. So thank you to the speakers for putting across your perspective within times. I'm going to call on you once more to do something slightly different. This is a career guidance seminar, and I did not introduce you to the extent that I should have because your reputation precedes you. And certainly your presentation today further cemented the high esteem that all of you are held in the eyes of most of us. Can I ask each one of you, maybe take 2 minutes and explain some aspect of your life which you think would be worthy of emulation or value to the participants, which is linked to the chosen path that you took to take you to where you are now. You can say, look, I did this, and because of this, this is where I am. Something that will personalize and connect it, and hopefully will give some inspiration and direction to the participants. So can I go in reverse order, and may I start with Rukshan?
Sure. Can you repeat the question so that I
Okay, maybe I'll start with myself so that will give you some time
Sure.
for you to formulate. Okay. So speaking for myself, I started my career, as I said, in the private sector 1 year, and then I joined the government sector as Attorney General's office, then came into private practice. But in addition to that, I developed a fairly good and a robust consulting practice, both nationally as well as internationally, working with organizations like the World Bank, ADB, JICA, European Union, and currently I just finished some work in Cambodia, etc. So the point I'm making is I kept all these sort of several things in the fire because these things brought different perspectives. And I never gave up my litigation practice, because when you go to court, you're forced to think in a particular way. And how I use this for my career development, if I may call it, is try to synthesize learnings and understandings from different perspectives. So the thinking that I get in a courthouse, sometimes I would use it in the boardroom and try to bring a value addition that is not available there. The work I get from my consulting work in governance, public-private partnerships, etc., investments, all that in the development sector, I would use sometimes in advising a client who wants to do a couple of $1 million deal with a foreign client, and sort of how the risk assessments are done, the risk assessments we do in one applies. So the ability to synthesize this knowledge is something that I've always tried to do, and hopefully make the cutting edge to differentiate me from rest whom I might be competing against, for want of a better word, in the space that we operate in. So, Rukshan, maybe you would like to take over now.
I was almost tempted to say that Mr. Kitsri Gunawardena probably has a lot more to offer than me.
All right.
Maybe
Kitsri, would you like to?
I've been listening to older and wiser heads, because I think that's something that I generally like to do, which is I listen to older and wiser heads and I take from them, and I always listen to my seniors, and I try and not just listen like to hear, but I listen to understand, like Dr. Sanjeeva said, because I think, like, for example, I started with Mr. Paul Ratnayaka, and he was a great mentor to me. And whenever he's the one that actually probably taught me this, is that you need to understand what he's trying to get you to achieve, basically. So look at the bigger picture. It's not just, oh, correct this little thing here or correct that thing and change this and whatever it is. So for me, I mean, I prefer honestly to listen to older and wiser heads. And even from this seminar itself, I've been learning a lot from Mr. Kitsri Gunawardena, and from everybody actually, but especially when it comes to the corporate world, like even Dr. Sanjeeva, when he was talking about certain things, I was learning as well, because I mean, sometimes you also know these things, but also it's a really good refresher when you get told it. So I think I'd rather Mr. Kitsri Gunawardena takes over.
Well, thank you, Rukshan. You really put me in the spot. Well,
Didn't mean to.
Well, I mean, for the benefit of the sort of the young lawyers and the final year law students and so on, one aspect that I can really talk to you guys about is that, see, about 20 years ago when I joined this organization, we had only 3 companies, and we were a small-time leasing company. But then the reason why I decided to join, after having a discussion with deputy chairman at that time, the guy who owns this company, is that more than the company, I saw value in him. I saw a young man with a lot of hunger, with a lot of risk-taking ability, wants to do something which is exciting. To be very, very honest with you, I remember, Harsha, I had this discussion in Mr. Aditya Vikramanayaka's chambers, by which time I had, spent about 10 years in SEC and Consumer Affairs Authority and Insurance Board and so on. Of course, the Attorney General's Department for a few years as well. So thereafter, my only sort of driving force, if I may use that term, was to be able to learn all aspects of this business. So when we decided, look, this company, we have 22 million people in this country. Whatever we do is going to be limited to that. We had this dream to build something where we would be able to cater to about 1 billion people, and as I'm happy to say, now we have achieved. So I was one person who was always interested in venturing out, taking risks and doing certain activities, which is usually, I suppose, not in line with the typical lawyer, and that's the reason as to why I suppose I'm where I am today. So one little advice I can tell young people is that you see, venture out and take the path which is untrodden. The time that we ventured out to Cambodia, I mean, a lot of people thought we are absolutely nuts to go to a country like Cambodia, but then we took from home about $1.5 million. And then after 8 years, when we sold our company to Kookmin Bank of South Korea for $603 million, a lot of people had their mouths open. I'm not bragging, but I'm just telling you the kind of opportunities that are available if you venture out and if you're able to take such kinds of risks. And in doing so, I single-handedly had to, with my limited knowledge of Sri Lankan law, had to sort of assess what is the legal system in Cambodia, what is the kind of investments, and we went into a company called Prozac. There were about 7 international funding agencies that were shareholders. So there were about 7 international law firms with whom we need to transact. And I always tell myself, I learned far more in that one transaction dealing with the best of law firms than all what I have learned during my career at law college. So that's the kind of training. And then, so it essentially, I mean, from there, when we moved to Myanmar, to countries in Africa, countries in Indonesia, I was more than happy to go to the Sunday fairs and understanding about the needs of microfinance borrowers, what are the actual challenges. So the point that I'm making here is that the fact that you're a lawyer, fact that you are from a noble profession should not prevent you from gaining insights into other areas of business which are of great value. And if you do that, and if you become a master at that, it becomes much easier for you to be looked upon by any organization to take decisions. And that's one of the areas that I would like to leave a thought with the young people. So don't be narrow-minded. Don't think that, look, I'm a lawyer, I'm a solicitor, so therefore this is the only work that is cut out for me. Particularly if you want to have a career, successful career in in the private sector. And last but not least, I would like to also just mention, for the benefit of these young people, one thing that Dr. A.R.V. Amarasinghe told me at the time that I was his research assistant. He was saying that I'm sure many of these young people would, be successful. You guys will do well in life. You all will acquire a lot of wealth, and you'll be, enjoying good lifestyles and so on. But for God's sake, from the very beginning, please invest time to learn about, one thing is that what you're going to consume as food and how you're going to invest the money that you earn. These 2 things, if you don't get a hold of, if you say, you may be the most successful lawyer, but at the age of 35, you have to go through with a heart operation, or if you're down with most of the non-communicable diseases which are plaguing the nations today, it's not going to be fun. Also, the money that you make, with a lot of difficulty, if you don't invest well. I remember the time I was on the board of HNB, we assess the management of the bank on what is referred to as CASA. So what is CASA? The money that they retain in the current account and the savings account, for which you just pay pittance. There are trillions of rupees worth of money in that. So you see, that is win for the bank and lose for the client. So don't get into that kind of a situation. All what I'm saying is this session is not enough for us to sort of discuss on those lines, but there's a lot of podcasts and there's a lot of expert knowledge that you can gain on the internet on how you should invest, how you should go about diversifying your investments and so on and so forth, because faster that you come to a position where the money that you're working hard today starts working for you, you become a much more comfortable human being in terms of thinking of work-life balance and so on and so forth. So all these ideas, maybe I'm a little controversial, or maybe I offend some people in saying this. When you're young, please don't try thinking of work-life balance. Please work towards a situation where you have balance in terms of you're able to afford your house, your whatever the basic needs that you have. Once you achieve that, then you can afford to think of work-life balance, holidays, all that kind of thing. So to achieve all those, look at these two areas as well. Just as successful, I'm wishing all of you all to be. Think in terms of, if you eat a lot of processed food and sodas and so on, and when you're studying for your cases, you're not going to be very successful in 20 years' time, and that's not what you want. Also, the money that you earn, if you just put it in a savings account or a FD and just forget about it, you ain't going to get anything, because inflation is going to eat into that, and the opportunity cost of money is going to make means out of that. And well, the banks and finance companies, like the companies that we own, are going to have the last laugh. Don't let that happen. Study the investment opportunities available locally as well as abroad, and think how I can invest so that my money will start working for me as soon as possible and as great as possible, so that you have a much more comfortable life. Few thoughts.
Dr. Sanjeeva, if you're still with us. Thank
Hi,
you.
yeah, very, very quickly. So I'm gonna, I don't, my way of thinking is slightly different. So first of all, I don't listen to old people, and they're always wrong. You should figure it out yourself, number one. Number two, all the old people will tell you, I did this, I did this, I did this, and then I got here. This is bullshit in my view. The way it works is, Steve Jobs had a great line. His line was, you can connect the dots looking backwards, but you cannot connect the dots looking forward. That is, you don't know what you do today that is going to impact you tomorrow. So you do what you think is right. You do what's in your capability, what's in your passion, what's in your gut, what your gut tells you to do. Sometime in the future, it might have an impact on you, or whatever, or it may not. And you can look back and say, I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, therefore I'm here. But you also remember, at every point you had hundreds of other choices. And there's no statement that says you couldn't have taken other choices and ended up here or in a better place. So you can only look backwards. You can't look forward, right? You always have opportunity. My second point is you always have opportunity. Most people are lazy to take it. Opportunity means hard work, taking the chance, taking the risk, and getting on with it and doing something. If you want to be successful in your life, take a chance, take a risk, work hard, volunteer, do something. Every single thing I've done, I can point back to various opportunities to volunteer I had. Before some of you guys were born, I was delivering every email to Sri Lanka in 1990 onwards, about 1992. Gihan Dias and Gihan was back here. We were both grad students in computer science. Every day I would call and deliver mail. We collected money, like $3 a person kind of money to make that work, right? I was completely volunteer. Nobody paid me anything. Nobody gave me anything. But later on, through that, I met a whole bunch of other people who had an impact on various other things I did. And I started the Lanka Software Foundation, which is a precursor to WSO2. Professor V.K. Samaranayaka, supported because he was the head of the UCSC at the time, and he had known about me from the time I was doing email, right? No plan, no strategy, no career plan. Just do what you can and enjoy your life, and life will take you wherever it's going to take you. Good luck.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. I think that's like the icing on the cake for what we did. I think speaking for myself, and I believe for the rest of the participants also, we heard a very rich collection of perspectives from people who have earned their place in their own right. I know we all came together as lawyers, Dr. Sanjeeva exempted. But having said that, I think the key takeaways is that we are in a profession where our knowledge, our skills are capable of being applied in a very broad spectrum of areas, which is great, as long as we see it that way. We are not limited maybe by specialization, like for example, in the science field, but because of the very subject that we claim to possess, we have that ability to engage in a wide spectrum of activities. And I think that was confirmed by all speakers. So if I may quickly recap, we started with Ms. Farzana Jamil talking about the ways in which if you want to excel in the traditional legal forum, in terms of practice as a lawyer, official bar, unofficial bar, transactional work, litigation work. She could have spoken a lot about other things, but that was the remit for this presentation. That was followed by Kitsiri, who shared his insights both first as an employee and now as an employer from the private sector, the attitudes that we must have, the value addition we can bring, and what the private sector would look from us if they are to retain our services in whatever manner we wish to be retained. And that was followed by a very interesting presentation by Dr. Sanjeev Veeravarana, who I think I would see as more as the entrepreneur, the person who takes the lead in creating wealth. And interestingly, Kitsiri and Sanjeev provided a very nice combination, one in the sort of the more newer industry and Kitsiri in the more traditional work, but both companies progressing at phenomenal speed into different parts of the world. So thank you for that. And I think that should give us the kind of the world that is out there if you are ready to take it. And Rukshan was very generous enough to share with us mostly his personal experiences as to what's the path one should trot, the practical way, the pragmatic way of actually going about doing it if you want to go beyond this island of ours. So I hope this evening has been as enjoyable for the rest of you as it was for us. Once again, on behalf of the Bar Association and the Career Guidance Committee, I would like to extend a very warm thank you to the panelists and to the participants for joining. And a special word of thanks to Isuri, who did all the coordination in addition to moderating this session to the extent that you did. And without your technical support, this would not have been possible. And so thank you very much for that. So having said that, let me wish all of you a very good life ahead and good night.
Thank you, Harsha. Same to you.
Thank you, sir. So this
very
brings
much.
us to the end of the second webinar of the series on professional, personal and career development titled Reimagining Legal Careers, Building Relevance, Value and Resilience in a Changing World. I once again thank the esteemed panelists, Mr. Harsha Fernando, President's Counsel, Mrs. Farzana Jamil, President's Counsel, Mr. Kitsiri Gunawardena, Dr. Sanjeeva Veeravarana, and Mr. Rukshan Athapattu for the fruitful and educational discussion and for dedicating your time to be here with us and sharing your insights. I thank the BSL Career Guidance and Mentorship Committee and the BSL Webinars and Legal Symposiums Committee for their dedication and hard work in organizing this insightful webinar. And last but not least, I thank all of you who have joined in for this session today through various platforms and for the interactive discussion that we've had. Thank you, and I hope you all have a very good night.